Hey everybody, this is David Schooley with the Big John MMA Fight Club. I'm here talking to Mr. Big John McCarthy. How you doing, John?
Doing good, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, listen, we get to do some fun stuff here. Unlike the rest of the world where they're talking about all of the fights, we get to talk about it with Big John McCarthy. And John, I gotta bend your ear a little bit today because there's some awesome fights coming up that I want to hear your commentary on. Now, obviously, I'm going to challenge everybody out there to go to the Big John's MMA Fight Club app and lock in their predictions. I'm not going to ask you for prediction, John, but I am going to ask you for some insight. You know these fighters and you know them well. You got the best seat, well, not really a seat, but the best place in the house on a lot of these fights right there in the ring with these guys, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, so let's get right to it. What's that?
I've never found a chair in there.
Yeah, you know, come to think of it, I've never seen you sitting down, other than in these interviews, right? Right on. So check this out. UFC 167, this is live on pay-per-view, Saturday, November 16th. Fight that a lot of people have been waiting for. A lot of huge GSP fans out there. But I do have to say, there's a lot of Johny Hendricks fans out there too, and that's the main matchup on this card, so let's just jump right in and start talking about this. GSP and Hendricks, long time in the making. What do you think, man?
You know what? It's a fight where either guy can win, and that's what you want in a championship fight, where you don't go into it thinking, the champion's got this. There's no way that that guy can beat him. Johnny can definitely beat George.
Right.
He just has to fight the right fight, same as George has to fight a smart fight to beat Johnny. And it's just dependent upon who's going to do what. Johnny comes into this with a lot of steam. You know, he's knocked out some big name guys.
Oh yeah.
He's put out guys that George wasn't able to get rid of. He has really done everything to prove that he's the guy that deserves a shot at the welterweight title, which George has held on to now for many years. So,
yeah.
Johnny has a huge left hand. He's a strong guy. He's a very stocky, well-built guy as far as, powerful, and he can deliver a huge left or right hand at any time. The real question is, can he land it on George? Will he land it on George? And how will he land it if he does? Because he cannot go into the fight, in my opinion, looking for the knockout.
Of course not. George is too smart of a fighter.
Johnny goes in there trying to land a big left hand. He's going to end up overextending. Is going to cause himself a lot of problems. George is going to be able to get into him. Johnny, technically, if you're looking at who's the better wrestler, Johnny's got huge wrestling credentials. He's an NC2A champion, All-American wrestler. He could out-wrestle George St-Pierre any day of the week. But this is not a wrestling match. This is MMA.
Right.
And if he overextends trying to land that big punch, George can get into him and definitely put him on his back. So he needs to be smart. He needs to go into this fight looking at this thing, I just want to touch him. I just want to keep touching him. And one of the times I touch him, I'm going to hurt him. And that's the way that Johny Hendricks needs to get into this fight.
Right.
George needs to go into this by saying, I need to keep this fight at the distance and in the position that I want it to be. When Johny Hendricks thinks I'm going to wrestle him, I'm going to be standing up and throwing my hands and kicks. And when Johnny thinks I'm going to be throwing my hands and kicks, I'm going to be coming in and making a clinch and making Johnny work. And that's going to be George's way of winning the fight. So either guy can win this fight. It is a competitive fight. George is the guy that the question is, the desire coming in on Johny Hendricks' side because he has worked very hard to get to this championship fight. Oh, yeah. And this is his chance. And with George St-Pierre, here's a guy that's been here for a long time. And after a while, and I'm not saying this is, this is the time for George, but it's a heavy load to carry, and sometimes after a while, guys tend to forget how important it really is.
Right.
Now, I don't think George is that guy, but it's tough to get yourself up. It's a much harder and more difficult road that George has to travel than it is the one that Johnny has to travel. And George has got a lot to prove. George has been there. He's got a lot of fights under his belt as the champion with a lot of decision wins, and a lot of people are wanting to see George finish a fight. George keeps on talking about he's going to do this, he's going to do that as far as finishing the fight. Here again is another chance. And if he finishes this fight, he finishes it against Johny Hendricks, he's making a bold statement about just how dominant he is.
No, I agree. It's funny. There is always a lot of talk. We've seen this with with Silva. We've seen this with St-Pierre. A lot of people talk about, them not finishing fights that, as strong as they maybe could have. But I don't think anybody can quite understand the pressure these guys have of keeping that title when they've had it for a while. And when they proved themselves in dominant fashion getting up there. And then when they're there, they have to defend it. Defending it is a little bit different than going after it. And people don't really realize that.
It absolutely is. It's a different mindset. You have to create these, situations in your mind where you're pushing yourself because there's nowhere higher for you to go.
Right.
You are the guy that everyone's shooting at. Now you're just trying to defend. And sometimes when we're defending, we don't become as, offensive as we might want to be. We tend to, take steps back and not think about, hey, I need these things because this is what really makes me happy. And so
sure, because
go after this fight.
Because the guy that's trying to get the throne, he's got nothing to lose. Let's risk everything. Let's throw it all out there, right? Swing for the fences.
That's true.
It's just a different ball game. But nevertheless, I think both these guys are very, very smart fighters. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and GSP for sure has always been commended as a very intelligent fighter, and I think it's going to be no different here. I would like to see him close it if he can, and I would like to see Johnny close it if he can. But it's going to be tough for either one of these guys because they're both very smart, and I don't think there's going to be any real risk taking here. But it should be a very good fight, I think. Anyway.
That's it.
So listen, Rashad Evans. Oh my gosh, we've seen such a crazy road with Rashad. And when we're talking crazy, who do you think of? Chael, right? So we've got Rashad Evans and Chael Sonnen sitting here together in the ring here on UFC 167. I got to see this, but I want to hear you. You know these guys more intimately than any of us ever could, and I just want to hear your insight on the two guys and what you think of their mindset coming into this fight.
These guys match up, really well as far as their skill sets and what they're good at. I think athletically is where you're going to separate them a little bit in that Rashad is a faster athlete than Chael is. I think Chael has got very good stand-up. He's very solid. I actually give the top game that Chael does a little bit more than I give Rashad's. I think their wrestling matches up very well. They're both very good wrestlers, and this is MMA again. It's not wrestling, and so that wrestling is, in a lot of ways, going to cancel each other out. It's not that neither guy can get the other guy down. They will be able to. Right. It's that Chael's top game is absolutely really good, and Chael's submission game I think is actually better than Rashad's overall. Not that Rashad doesn't have a good one. I just, Chael's a lot better than people give him credit for.
Sure.
I think they're in two different positions coming into this fight. Rashad had a couple of losses, decision loss to Nogueira. Then he came in, he had a close decision win against Dan Henderson.
Right.
Okay fight. Chael's coming off of a fight where he submitted Shogun Rua. And that was a big fight where Chael showed, hey, he's got a good submission game, caught him in a beautiful guillotine, did everything right, and showed that, hey, you make a mistake against me, I'm going to capitalize on that mistake. So this is a close fight. This is absolutely one of those ones. Either guy can win this. Chael talks more than Rashad.
Yeah.
Rashad, is a little bit quieter, not much, but a little bit quieter.
I was going to say not a whole lot. There was a lot of talking back when he was going up against Jones, right?
And Rashad's a good guy who believes in himself, and he should because he's a dynamite fighter, dynamite athlete, very fast, has good movement when he fights, and he's thinking about what he's doing. He actually moves very well. He's going to do the things he wants to do. The question is, can he put Chael in the positions that gives him the opportunity to score against him? Chael on top of Rashad's in trouble. Rashad being on top of Chael's going to have some problems. In the stand-up, I think that the movement and speed of Rashad is the deciding factor in that stand-up game. Yep. But Chael can hit very hard, and so can Rashad, so they can both hurt each other in the stand-up.
Well, I said it pretty loosely that Chael is the crazy one. It's awesome. I absolutely love the guy. I love the way he talks. He talks a very strong and crazy game, but he's very intelligent. He does it for a reason. It's kind of like back in the days of Muhammad Ali. He talked his game because it was part of what he did. But man, when he gets in that cage, you see some serious skill. I was really impressed against Rua. with Chael against Tua. And you know what? I've always loved Rashad. So again, you know, I'm the guy always saying I love both guys, but it's true. You know, when you're a fan of MMA in general, you see these guys and you just go, man, I want to see this fight. I don't have as much of a say in which guy I want to win this particular one because I love both these guys. But man, I'm gonna love watching it. Now the next one, killer, Rory McDonald, who is by all means the epitome, in my opinion, he's the epitome of what the new MMA guy should be. I mean, he's coming in just looking beautiful on all fronts. And then you've got the guy, as you said it yourself, with cinder block hands, Robbie Lawler, and they're going to bang against each other. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts here. Man, what a matchup.
Well, you know, what you said about Rory is the truth. Rory is that new breed of MMA fighter that really didn't grow up as a wrestler, didn't grow up as a jiu-jitsu guy. He grew up as everything and utilizes everything. You know, Rory's, you know, breakout moment, I guess, if you want to say, you know, when Rory hit the scene in the UFC, you know, he fought Carlos Condit and did a phenomenal job, even though he lost the fight in the end. You know, the referee ended up stopping the contest on him, and should have, because you know what, he was taking too much damage at the time. He has been unbelievable ever since, and his decimation of BJ Penn shows you how good Rory McDonald is in the stand-up. The fight that he did against Jake Ellenberger, although that was, you know, his last fight, that's, you know, he won the fight, was a little bit more reserved in what he did, was not as offensive, tried to counter a lot, and didn't put on the performance that a lot of people expected out of him.
Right.
And in this fight, you know, coming up with Robbie, he's gonna end up being in with a guy that he's got to put his hands on first, because if he doesn't put his hands on him, Robbie, like, you know, you said, he's got those really hard cinder blocks in his gloves, and the man, you know, he's probably pound for pound the heaviest striker there is in MMA. He hits that hard. He's incredibly strong. He's incredibly powerful, and he will hurt you with one punch that will put you out of the fight. You know, Josh Koscheck is a very good wrestler, very good fighter. Was, you know, using, you know, his wrestling skill against Robbie. Took one punch. You know, where Josh Koscheck is hurt to the point he can't defend himself. That's what happens with Robbie Lawler. Robbie, all it takes is one. Now, Robbie cannot go into this fight the same as I say Johny Hendricks with George. He can't go in looking for that one big punch against Rory McDonald. He does that. He is putting himself into a position where Rory McDonald has the edge in this fight based upon he's trying to do one thing instead of being a complete fighter, which Rory McDonald is, and so he needs to be that complete fighter and make Rory have to deal with multiple elements of the fight. Don't make yourself just a complete stand-up fighter. Work at taking him down. Even if you don't take him down, show him that, hey, I'm willing, I'm going to try to put you there.
Absolutely. Keep the defensive going. Yep.
Make him think about it.
Yep. Well, speaking of Koscheck, next matchup, we got Koscheck against Woodley, Tyron Woodley. What do you think there, man?
Two phenomenal wrestlers.
Yep.
You know, there's a couple of differences, you know, in the way they go about doing things. Josh Koscheck is at this point in his career very relaxed when he's in the stand-up game. Doesn't press a lot. Throws good combinations. Smart about what he does. Is still a phenomenal wrestler, but going up against another phenomenal wrestler, and actually a guy at this point in their careers is probably the better athlete at this point in Tyron Woodley. Probably a little bit quicker, a little bit faster from Tyron Woodley, but tends to tail off a little bit more than Josh Koscheck does. Josh is able to maintain a pace throughout a fight and maintain it pretty well. He always comes in shape. He works himself very hard. Tyron is going to have to be that guy that, you know, controls the pace to make himself comfortable in the fight. If Josh can control the pace and push Tyron, that's going to lead to Josh having a good fight. If Tyron controls the pace, then that's going to lead to Tyron having a good fight.
Right.
So, because the wrestling is going to kind of cancel itself out, so you're going to see these guys standing, and you're going to see who is the guy that can press the guy in this stand-up to places they don't want to be.
Agreed. So, but listen, these are all going to be great fights. I'd love to touch on all the rest of the fights. There's some great ones. You got Donald Cerrone against Evan Dunham. You got Ed Herman against Tails Leeds. I mean, we've got some really, really great fights on this card. But man, the top ranking ones, GSP, Johny Hendricks. I know people are going crazy over this already. There's all kinds of chatter. I want to challenge everybody out there to lock in your prediction on what you think is going to happen between these guys on the Big John's MMA Fight Club. And then, of course, John, thank you so much for your commentary. We so appreciate all the comments you've got. You're so close to these fighters, and we appreciate your input.
Thank you much, Dave.
All right, we'll see you at the fights.